Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Now in this video, I want to talk about how to add 3D depth to your mix. Now, before I start off with the video, I just want to talk about why I haven't been uploading recently. Um, I recently got a job, so I've kind of spent most of my time um, around that and also planning for university in September, so I've been kind of busy. Uh, but I managed to take a little bit of free time over the week, um, and I decided to make another video for this YouTube channel. And this is a concept that I thought is really interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So we're gonna dive into that. Also, just a quick note. If I do sound a little stuffy in this video, that's on my end. I'm sorry for that. I'm still sick and I have a couple of like nose allergies, so I'm just trying to get over that. But uh, yeah, you just have to deal with that. So before I even go into how to add like 3D depth inside of your mix, we have to talk about what panning is and how it works. So let's pull up a simple audio file here. So when you have an audio file, it's either going to be mono or it's going to be stereo. And what I mean by that is mono means one channel. So it's only going to be one stream of audio. Um, and if you're wearing headphones or you have a pair of speakers that are a pair of two, so you have two speakers or you have, two speakers in your headphones, that means you're going to be playing two different, you're not two different, but two of the same audio channels. So in this example,
Harvard list number 1. The birch canoe slid on the smooth planks.
you can see from the audio levels that both of the bars are the exact same height every time.
The birch canoe slid on the smooth planks.
That's because it's copying the signal for each channel. This is one channel of audio, so it's going to be playing both of the same kind of like audio signal in both channels. This has the perceived effect of having the sound be at the center of your kind of like spatial kind of awareness.
Harvard list number 1.
Now, if we pull up a different type of sample, like a stereo sound or a sound with two channels, like let's just say we pull up like a drum loop or something. Like this. Now you can see from this waveform already that there's two channels playing. There's one on the top and there's one on the bottom. In this case, they're almost the exact same, but you can see there's like slight differences in the kind of left and right channel. There's two channels in this, which means there's one channel that's playing in the left ear or the left speaker, and the other one playing in the right ear or the right speaker. And this is the perceived effect of having a stereo sound instead of a mono sound. If we compare this with the sample that I just played, you can see we have one channel in the center, and this one we have two channels on the left and on the right. So that's how you can distinguish them. Just to make it a little bit more clear about the stereo effect, I'm going to just make a simple sound here. All right, and I'm going to resample this so you can see the waveform. So here we can clearly tell that we have two different channels of audio. We have one channel on the left ear, which is the lower sine wave, and then the other, which is the really high sine wave. And you can tell that it's stereo because you have two different channels of information going on in both ears. So instead of having it sound like it's in like the dead center of your field of like perception, you have two different sounds in both ears. And that's basically the simple concept of having two different channels. Now, where panning comes into effect is when you have um, a sample. Let's say you pull up a drum loop or something, the same drum loop that I used here. It's clearly displayed here that we're in the center here, but what we can do is pan our sample either to the left or to the right. So if I demonstrate that here, as I pan it to the left, the sound is getting more and more towards the left ear. And vice versa, if I do it to the right, now it's completely to the right ear. And how this works is basically you're taking the two channels of audio. Let's say like you're panning it to the left. You're turning down the signal of the right channel in order to have more sound come out of the left ear. And if you want to pan it to the right, then you're taking down more of the left channel, so it sounds like it's coming from the right ear. You can see from the audio levels here, I don't know if it's clear, but you only have sound playing from the left ear when it's completely to the left. You can see the audio levels rising. And if I go to the right, the left channel is getting quieter and quieter until it reaches 0 at the very end. So that's basically it's the simple principle of how the Ableton pan feature works. But I want to do a quick disclaimer for this type of panning because it can be a bit destructive to your audio. And what I mean by that is, since you have a stereo file with two different channels of information, for the most part, if you pan in this kind of fashion, you can actually lose some of the audio information in your file. And sometimes you don't want that to happen. Sometimes it could be an issue. And I'm just going to do a quick example of that. If we have the same kind of sine wave test that I did here, and just resample it, we can clearly hear we have two sounds going on in the ears. But if I pan this all the way to the left, watch what happens. The high-pitched sine wave is completely gone from the sound, and vice versa. If I pan it all the way to the right, then you have no more low-pitched sine wave. And that can be a problem if you're trying to pan the sound and you still want to preserve the actual sound itself. Because maybe you have a stereo file which has information in the left channel or information in the right channel that you want to preserve. If you're panning it this way, you're losing basically half of the audio information, which, it can be a huge problem if you don't know what you're doing. So there's actually a way to, kind of solve this issue without having to use this kind of built-in Ableton pan feature. What you can actually do is right-click on this panning kind of slider, and you can click Select Split Stereo Pan Mode. Now, this is going to divide this kind of slider into two sliders, and now you have individual control over each channel of audio. So with our left channel, we have the low-pitched sine wave, and you're going to see here, if I put this exactly all the way to the right, instead of having the low-pitched sine wave be completely gone, you have the low-pitched sine wave on the right ear. So now you have both sine waves playing at the right ear at the same time, as opposed to if you have it this way. You have both sides of the information, which is really cool. And the thing you can do with this as well, with this kind of split slider here, is you can completely just invert both of them. So now you have the high-pitched sine wave in the left ear, and now you have the low-pitched in the right ear. So that's basically a way to kind of like fix the problem of having that cancellation of the audio signals if you're doing the normal panning this way. Now, let's say you've already messed around with that. You know how the Ableton normal panning works, and you also know the split stereo pan mode, and you've worked it out. You've worked with it quite a bit, and you want to try something a little bit more sophisticated. How would you go about that? Well, as you remember with the normal Ableton panning, all you're doing is basically changing the volume of one signal of the both channels. So you're turning down the volume of one channel to make the other channel sound louder than the other. Well, you can do this in other aspects than just volume. If you take a low-pass filter, for example, and you put it on one channel, that channel is going to sound considerably darker than the other channel. Now, what would that sound like in context? Well, let's figure it out. I have a left and right split rack, which basically splits the left and the right channel. Just a quick side note, this -3 dB utility is basically just a gain compensation, because when you're splitting the left and the right signal and summing them back together, you're going to get a slight increase in audio power. So just make sure that you have this kind of -3 dB gain reduction at the very end, so the level is consistent. What we could do is take one of the channels here. Let's say I take the right channel here, and I apply a low-pass filter, kind of like this. And now if I play both channels together, you get this really weird kind of 3D effect. Not really 3D, but like a more natural and like realistic sounding panning. Because you're not just turning the volume down of one of the channels. You're actually rolling off some of the frequencies, so it has a more kind of natural dip, as opposed to having that kind of artificial just volume gain reduction. Because it's kind of emulating like real life, right? When you have a sound that's farther away from you, you're hearing less and less of the higher frequencies as it's going farther away from your perception. So having that low-pass filter on one of the channels kind of just emulates that, and it's kind of tricking your brain into thinking that the left channel actually has more of the sound source than the right channel. Now you can do this the other way and have the low-pass filter be on the left channel, and you can have the same effect but reverse, which is really interesting, and I feel like it could be used for a lot of panning aspects in mixing. If you just want to have something that's a bit more sophisticated and advanced compared to just like normal regular volume panning, and it's pretty cool. Now, another aspect of this, alongside volume, alongside filtering, is using delay. And I'm not talking about like an echo delay. I'm talking like an actual audio delay. Having the sound be shifted to the right compared to its normal kind of signal. And the way you can replicate a delay shift like this is either you can use a third-party kind of thing, or I like to use Ableton's delay, turning the dry wet all the way up, feedback all the way down, turning off the filter, and turning off the sync, so you can kind of just like change it in milliseconds. So let's just turn off the rack for a second so I can demonstrate this. So what that's doing is basically, it's like adding latency to the sound. It's adding a shift to the audio signal, so it happens later than it actually is. And what you can do with that is, if you want to replicate the sound being a little bit more stereo instead of being dead on center, is basically adding this kind of delay to one of the channels. And I can explain that, or I can show an example of that right here. So if we do the same kind of thing here, let's do it on the right channel. Dry wet all the way up, feedback down, turn off the filter, and turn off sync. Now it sounds very stereo because the right channel is happening a little bit later than the left channel, and it's causing this kind of shift, which perceives in your brain, it kind of perceives the sound to be wider in like in space. And the more you kind of like bring this delay up, the more stereo it's going to get. So if I go a little bit like here, close to 0, it's pretty dead on center because both of the channels are like almost the same. They're pretty close to being mono. But as you spread them apart more, at some point you can really hear the difference of the left channel and the right channel being different. And just to prove to you that this is an actual delay shift happening, if we resample this and we zoom into the audio, we can clearly see that one of the channels is being offsetted from the other one. So in this case, the right channel is being a little bit later. It's happening a little bit later than the left channel, which is causing this kind of stereo effect. And this effect is literally called the Haas effect. A lot of plugins can emulate this. The best example I have is Kilohertz Haas, which literally does the exact same thing. It takes one of the channels, you can either choose the left or the right channel, and it's going to delay it by a certain amount, which causes this stereo effect to happen. So it's one way to make the sound a little wider, and it can be really cool for kind of stereo purposes. Now, I want to note this. This could cause phase cancellation. So if you're really concerned about, the whole like mixing aspect of your low end and stuff like that, maybe it's not the best idea to put it on something like that. But just, use the Haas effect at your own risk. Know what it's doing to the signal so you can kind of avoid it. I'd avoid putting it on like any kind of bass sound or stuff like that where you can have a lot of the low end cancel out, because that can be really harmful to your mix. So I just want to make you guys pay attention to that, just so you know about it. But if you know what you're doing and you use it on things sparingly, then it should not be a problem. And with this Haas effect kind of thing, we can kind of combine the idea of having the filtering on one channel and also the delay, combining them together to make this like more stereo sound. So let's do this delay thing, and then we're going to put the low pass filter. I'm doing a kind of gentle slope instead of having like a really harsh cut, because I feel like it sounds a lot more natural. But let's hear what this sounds like. And we can mess with the time as well. If you do this really short, you can obviously tell that there's like a flanging effect or like comb filter kind of thing happening, but on like wider kind of intervals, so like larger numbers, it's not really that noticeable. But it's a really cool effect, having this filter in tandem with the Haas effect in order to create this very stereo sound. And you're going to see in a moment, this is not the only thing you can do to kind of elevate your spatial awareness in a mix. Now, in a second, I'm going to be explaining about HRTF filters, and how they're used to kind of create the 3D effect that you're kind of aware with. If you remember the kind of like 8D audio trend, where the sound sounded like it was going around you in a circle, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm going to show you how to use this in practice with mixes to kind of elevate the spatial awareness in your mix. Now, when I'm talking about HRTFs, I'm really talking about a head-related transfer function. Now, this is a way to kind of simulate the way how sound is perceived through like the human ears. It's this really kind of mathematical thing, which I'm not going to go in detail about. But if you're really into that math kind of sciencey stuff, this is a really cool kind of concept that I recommend you check out. So, like as it's stated from Wikipedia, the HRTF filters, it's basically like a transfer function where it kind of depicts how the sound will be filtered and kind of changed through like the human ears. So let's say you have kind of like a sound source somewhere in space. You're having two different channels of audio being sent through your ears. And these two channels are going to vary in terms of distance. So the delay between the two channels is going to differ, as well as the volume and the filtering of the sound. So if the sound is closer to your right ear, you're going to hear a lot more of the high frequencies compared to the left channel. Now, like this is something that we've already simulated with the kind of channel splitting with the filter and the Haas effect that we were doing. But this is a lot more advanced. This uses a lot more kind of complex filters to shape not only the left and the right, but also being able to kind of expand that into a 3D dimension. So you can go to the front of the viewer or the listener and the back of the listener, as well as going above and below the listener. So you have this very 3D dimensional kind of way of perceiving audio, which is very interesting. And there's actually quite a couple of plugins that can emulate this for us, which I'm going to show examples of. Now, I think the best plugin to kind of emulate HRTF filters and all of that matter is DearVR Pro 2. Now, this is a plugin by Sennheiser Audio and Dear Reality. It's this plugin that simulates kind of the effect of having a 3D sound source using HRTF filters. And obviously, with these kind of filters, you can kind of change how the sound is perceived through a 3D dimensional kind of perspective. So you have your distance, of course, which is kind of going along the x-axis. But you also have the azimuth, which is kind of changing it as well. So you're changing the x and the z value of this sound source, but you can also change the y value here, so you have the elevation of the sound. Now, if I do an example with this same drum loop, now I'm going to turn this down because it is quite loud. It sounds really trippy. It literally sounds like the sound is being like going. It's like it's getting closer to you and farther away from you in different directions and stuff. Turning on the reflections, I think, makes it a bit more realistic. And if we pull up the YZ value here, you can make it sound like it's going above your head and below as well. You can add a little bit of reverb too. And this could get really trippy. And another plugin to do this, I think this is free. It's called a DR Micro. It's by the same company. This is kind of just like a version of the plugin with less features and stuff, but I think it uses the same algorithm. So instead, you have this spiral kind of dial thing, which you can control the azimuth of the sound source. So this is like completely to the right. You can go to the left and to the back and front. And you have the elevation of the sound too, which is really cool. One last plugin I think that works quite well is Amio Orbit. They're all from the same company. This one is from Sennheiser, but Dear Reality and Sennheiser have kind of like collaborated together to make the other plugins. So this is kind of just like their own plugins. But it does the same effect. Which is really cool in my opinion. I think they're quite underused in music production, and I feel like it could be quite a special thing to hear from people's mixes. Now, along with what we've all covered in this video, I just want to add one quick thing. There's also a way to add a little bit of stereo effect with Ableton's reverb, and not in the way you'd expect. Usually with Ableton Reverb, you'd use it to make it sound like it's in a room, and it has like kind of this long decay, like so, which can make it sound a little bit stereo already. But what I like to do is kind of condense this reverb really, really shortly to make it sound like it's close, very, very close to the listener. And it gives this trippy kind of like stereo metallic effect, and I just wanted to show it to you guys. So what you have to do to achieve this is, first of all, bring the dry wet all the way up. So you're just hearing the reverb signal. Bring the pre-delay all the way down, the size all the way down, and the decay all the way down. Already you have this weird kind of sound. Also, you can turn off diffusion and chorus and bring down the diffuse all the way down, so you're only having the early reflections of the reverb. And you can mess with these like spin amount and rates. So you get this weird stereo effect. And you can change the size ever so slightly. To get like weird metallic like effects, and it's really cool in my opinion. Oh, also a quick side note, if you don't use Ableton but you have the Melda bundle, Melda has this really good reverb plugin called mturboreverb, and you can kind of do the same kind of process by just removing all the late reflections. Usually there's 3 that's enabled. You can enable the first one, make sure that the knob is set all the way to the left so it's only including the early reflections, and turn the dry wet all the way up. You get the same kind of effect, and you can turn the length down. In my opinion, it sounds a lot cleaner and a lot more, it has a lot more of an effect compared to Ableton's reverb. And of course you get a bunch of more kind of options. Yeah. So just to do a quick recap of all of the techniques that I explained in this video, I just want to show you guys this quick demo that I've cooked up. This is a beat that I've made a couple of days ago, and I've kind of applied the same mixing techniques that I've just explained in kind of a song context, just so you guys can hear what it actually sounds like. So here's the demo real quick with all of the effects applied. So yeah, that's the beat. And now I'm just going to disable all of the effects that are applying these stereo panning techniques. Now here's what it sounds like without all the effects. So there's quite a difference, and I'm going to go through each of the sounds just so you guys can hear kind of the difference going on. So starting off with these rolls. First of all, I have this M spectral pan. This is a plugin that I didn't touch on, but this is doing the same effect as doing the panning, except this is panning at different frequencies. So different frequency bands are going to be placed differently around the channels. So you get this like tiny stereo effect here as well. Now for this 808, I actually used the Haas effect here to add more stereo width. Let's see here. That's the same. Now we have this kind of snippet here from another beat. Which I started off with a wash delay. Which is essentially just a bunch of different ping pong delays, which are slightly delayed from each other, so they're like drifting away as more as they delay. And we also have an LR split. Which is enabling these low pass filters every 2 bars. So it's adding that slight kind of natural panning effect. Now for this one, I wanted to demonstrate how sound placement, just literally placing the sounds, can vary kind of the stereo field. Because depending on the sounds that you choose, they could be very, very stereo. So instead of having these kind of like boring mono sounds, if you have the right sound selection, they can be all over the place in terms of the stereo field. Now, for this effect in specific, I actually messed around with the split stereo pan mode, and I made them kind of cross each other, so they're kind of like going in and out. So that's adding a little bit of stereo, as well as this kind of roll thing. I messed around with just adding like normal panning to the roll, so it's kind of like drifting inside of the beat. So there's that going on as well. And also this instrument rack. Which usually has a DRVR micro. So this kind of pad sound is being kind of placed all around the 3D dimension. So that's blended in. And finally, we have this bed field sound, which not only has a ping pong delay, but also a DRVR Pro. Which is being automated in all dimensions. And yeah, that's basically it. This kind of just demonstrate how you can really elevate your mix by just messing around with panning, different panning techniques, and 3D sound placement to get like really interesting results. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to show for you guys today. Again, I apologize for not posting a lot. I'm really trying to fix that, so hopefully soon I'll go make some new videos with new ideas for you guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching.